Laura Ingraham had NFL player, actually New England Patriots tight end Ben Watson on her program to discuss Jemele Hill's recent op-ed in The Atlantic. Now, Ingram's up in arms because she's constantly triggered by anything that she disagrees with in the media. But this op-ed specifically talked about how black athletes should consider going to historically black colleges and universities because of the funding that these athletes bring into these schools. So there is a disparity in the way that majority white schools are funded versus the money that these historical black schools are able to raise. Now, I'm gonna get into the details of what Jemele Hill argued, but first I wanna go to the videos because keep in mind, Laura Ingraham brought Watson on specifically because she believed he was going to agree with her. So did it work out? Take a look.
Former ESPN anchor Jemele Hill created kind of stir with a piece in The Atlantic where she argued that black athletes should stop attending white majority colleges. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I read the article, and when I saw the uproar over it, I read the article, and I agree with her. She had some great points in that article. When you look at the history of HBCUs, and you look at the hundreds of thousands of black professionals that have come from these schools over the course of the last several years since they've been created, and you look at what's been lost since integration has happened, what she was saying was simply that athletics is a multi-billion-dollar business. I went to two historically white universities, Duke University and University of Georgia, that have a lot of money based on athletics. What she was saying that, look, we're living in a time where there's a big racial wealth gap. The average white family has a net income, a net worth that's 10 times that of a black family. And so if we're able to have some of these athletes that create so much income go to some of these schools, not that white students don't go and students of other ethnicities don't go. We live in a time where everybody can go wherever they want to. But what she was saying simply, if we're trying to pump money and revenue into some of these communities, that there's still this big disparity, this may be a way to do it.
Oh, Laura, one of your producers didn't do that pre-interview. Naughty, naughty. We're gonna go to Laura Ingram's reaction in just a second, but I wanted to get your thoughts on how he answered the question.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, no, I thought he was completely and totally prepared. And like he said, he read the article and he made good arguments for it. The unfortunate part is that Laura Ingraham wasn't there to have a debate. She was there to have someone just kind of nod along and agree with her, not to, open-minded sentiments.
Now, she thought that he would agree with her because he apparently supported, is his name Drew Brees? Yeah, Drew Brees, who has been working alongside Focus on the Family, which is a terrible right-wing anti-gay organization. And so since he defended Brees, Laura Ingraham thought, oh, well, he's one of us, so he's gonna come on, and this is what we need. We need a black man or a black person to come on my show and say terrible things about Jemele Hill. And that's not what she got. And here's how she reacted to it.
Look, she lays it out very, very cleanly, and it's actually something that I agree with.
All right, Benjamin. Well, I think that Duke would have not been thrilled about your not being there, but we'll leave it at that. I mean, the college sports would certainly be a lot different today if we went down a color-coded way of figuring out college admissions. I mean, that's resegregating the country. Why do we want that?
Well, no, because segregation, as you know, is government mandated.
Yeah, I get it.
This is not segregation. Yeah. This is if you read the artitle and see what she lays
I read the article. All right, we got to go.
She's so unbearable.
She's so salty.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. She's the worst. I read it, okay? I read it.
Oh, man.
All right, so
she's so mad.
She's mad, but I enjoyed watching her frustration.
As soon as they called cut, she was like, "Get me that producer's head."
The weird thing is that, okay, so a lot of these unfortunate pundits tend to think that the black community is a monolith, which we are not. We all hold different opinions, different viewpoints, but also within each individual is also a range of thoughts about different things. And like you had pointed out, the fact that he supports Drew Brees doesn't necessarily mean that he can't be completely objective and also agree with Jemele Hill's article. Like, get out of here for thinking that, it's just like a team sport, as in I have to support this one side all the time. It's like, really, Laura, who's really playing sports? Who's on teams here?
No, but you make such a good point, and you just touched on something that is important. So on the right, there's a difference between the way they treat one another as opposed to those on the left. On the left, we are very hypercritical, right? Like we are very much willing to hold one another to account or criticize one another when we feel that someone's wrong on something. But on the right, everything is very tribal and they support one another and everything is black and white. You're either with us or against us. So the fact that Watson had come out in support of Breeze, to the right wing and people like Laura Ingraham signals, then he's gonna agree with us on all of the other right wing talking points that we put out there. So it is kind of fascinating to see this in real time and see how, she's expecting one thing, but you have this individual who's like most other Americans, right? They have a mishmash of different political views. Not everyone is ideologically consistent, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I just loved, it was a beautiful thing to watch. But I do want to just quickly give you guys some more details on what Hill wrote, because I think it was important. It provided me at least a perspective I had never even really thought about. So as we know, there are a lot of black athletes at colleges throughout the country who don't make any money. They're not allowed to make any money through their participation in these sports, but they bring in a lot of money for these schools. So Hill writes, the NCAA reported $1.1 billion in revenue for its 2017 fiscal year. Most of that money comes from Division I men's basketball tournament. In 2016, the NCAA extended its television agreement with CBS Sports and Turner Broadcasting through 2032, an $8.8 billion deal. About 30 Division I schools each bring in at least $100 million in athletic revenue each year. Almost all of these schools are majority white. In fact, black men make up only 2.4% of the total undergraduate population of the 65 schools in the so-called Power 5 athletic conferences. Yet black men make up to 55% of the football players in those conferences and 56% of the basketball players. She continues to write, black athletes have attracted money and attention to the predominantly white universities that showcase them. Meanwhile, black colleges are struggling. Alabama's athletic department generated $174 million in the 2016-2017 school year, whereas the HBCU, historical black colleges and universities that generated the most money from athletics that year, Prairie View A&M, brought in less than 18 million.
Wow.
So just to give you a bigger picture, she continues to write, beyond sports, the average HBCU endowment is only 1/8 that of the average predominantly white school. Taken together, all of the HBCU endowments combined make less than 1/10 of Harvard's.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah. So it's about the numbers and it's about representation and it's about giving back to your community. I think that it's a perspective that's, the fact that Laura Ingraham and members of the right read that and they get offended by it is amazing to me.
And something that I thought was really, really strong in her piece is the fact that HBCUs, that they're a vital part of creating the black professional class. Like the vast majority of black professionals, doctors, lawyers, that they come from HBCUs. And so to be able to continue to generate that is very important for the future of the black community. And something lastly to point out that's kind of actually cool when you think about this is the Fair Pay to Play Act. And that's gonna let college athletes collect endorsement money. And that could help encourage more athletes to go to more schools of their choosing, including HBCUs. And that act just passed through the Assembly in California, and they expect it to go through the Senate, and hopefully Newsom will sign it. But of course, the NCAA and a lot of schools would prefer that not be the case, because essentially it would allow students and black athletes to have more mobility and decision making in what schools they choose to go to, because they can still rake in the money.
I love that Laura Ingraham is horrified by the idea of segregation when it's black students making money for white colleges. Yeah. Like that's when she's like, oh my God.
No, when it's black athletes could potentially make money for HBCUs.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like the black athletes right now are making billions of dollars for these predominantly white colleges. But when it's like, oh, well, maybe you guys should think about going to a HBCU, she's like, oh my God, the racism, the segregation is hard. It's like, come on, Laura, give me a break.
We know how she really feels about racism.
Seriously.
As is evidenced by her commentary on kids who are literally dying in cages at the border. She loves it and defends it all the time.